Jrue Holiday will always be known as an NBA championship X Factor. Holiday wasn't the central superstar of the 2021 champion Milwaukee Bucks, but Giannis Antetokounmpo didn't get a ring until he had Jrue by his side. Same goes for Jason Tatum and the Boston Celtics. They flirted with glory for years until, boom, Jrue arrived and pushed them over the edge. It's not hard to figure out why Holiday was a repeat missing ingredient. Over a decade plus in the NBA, he earned a reputation as your favorite player's favorite player. A boundlessly versatile defender, like truly a master of the defensive arts. Erudite and rugged enough to stop anyone. A well-rounded but never domineering offensive talent. A rock-solid teammate and a likable, community-oriented human being. A baller, a winner, a class act, and, sure enough, as soon as he had a real opportunity, a champion in multiple cities. To understand the Jrue we now know, it helps to understand the Jrues we saw before and the Jrues who could have been. Let's meet these versions of Jrue Holiday in the Prism. Jrue Holiday's talent is unique and his resume is excellent, but no one would mistake him for a superstar. That word just doesn't describe the way he plays nor the type of attention he receives for his NBA career. High school Jrue was different. Jrue grew up in Los Angeles, California, and he grew up in basketball. Every single member of his family played D1 ball, both parents and all three of his siblings. Two of those siblings joined him in the NBA. Jrue, though, was the star, not just of the Holiday clan, but of the entire state. As a high school senior, Jrue piloted Campbell Hall School to its third title in 4 years by filling up the entire stat sheet, earning state Mr. Basketball honors. And this isn't a California senior class packed with future NBA stars. The names DeMar DeRozan, Klay Thompson, Paul George all pop off the list in hindsight. Even in that company, Jrue was the guy. He won National Player of the Year in 2008, starred in the All-American game, and ranked at or near the top of every prospect list. If Holiday had graduated just a couple years prior, he probably would have jumped straight to the NBA and become one of the top draft picks. But since he arrived after the league instituted its age limit, Holiday attended college, and here we reach a fascinating fork in the road. Every basketball school in the country wanted Jrue, obviously. But Jrue passed on those offers and the chance to play with his brother Justin at Washington. He wanted to stay home and attend UCLA. Now, it would be wrong to call this choice a mistake given what we know now. Holiday became an excellent and accomplished and very wealthy NBA player, and I will add, he met his wife during his 1 year in college. But actually, the way Jrue met his wife tells us something about why UCLA wasn't necessarily the right fit. Before she was Lauren Holiday, professional and international soccer player, she was Lauren Cheney, UCLA soccer player. And the story goes that Lauren Cheney met her future husband because she observed a child trying to get the autograph of Bruins star Darren Collison, only to discover with disappointment that she was actually talking to Jrue. Lauren chimed in, and the rest is history. But let's talk about Darren Collison. In 2005, Collison was UCLA's key backcourt recruit. Collison played behind star point guard Jordan Farmar for a season, then Farmar left for the NBA, and Collison ascended. In 2006, Russell Westbrook was UCLA's key backcourt recruit. Westbrook played behind star point guard Darren Collison for a season, then Collison stayed for his junior year. Yeah. When Jrue Holiday committed to UCLA in 2007, the Bruins were stacked at his position. Westbrook was starting beside the elder Collison. But after the Bruins made yet another Final Four in 2008, everyone expected the logjam to clear. Collison would join star forward Kevin Love in entering the NBA draft. Westbrook would become UCLA's starting point guard no matter what, with Holiday as his freshman apprentice. The cycle would continue. But it didn't work like that. Even without a huge role, the sophomore Westbrook rocketed up draft boards enough that he decided to bolt early for the NBA. Collison, meanwhile, decided to return again to play his senior college season. So this was not the situation Jrue Holiday expected when he got to campus. Holiday profiled as a natural point guard, perhaps even more so than Westbrook. But just like Russ, he had to play off-ball a lot while Collison held down his one spot. Playing out of position beside a star point guard in Coach Ben Howland's slow-down system, Holiday's freshman numbers didn't look so hot, especially compared to his ridiculous high school stats. But instead of waiting out Collison's graduation and proving himself as a sophomore, Holiday opted to take a gamble and enter the 2009 NBA draft. 2009 was a point guard draft, and while I can't say it for sure, I strongly suspect a Jrue Holiday who had played somewhere other than UCLA would have been right up there with these guys atop draft boards. Instead, he was disadvantaged not only by sharing the spotlight with Collison, but by being compared to Westbrook. In the 2008 draft, Russ had the obvious raw athleticism to win over NBA teams despite his overshadowed college career. Holiday's potential was subtler, and he just didn't have quite the same juice at draft time. Thus, Holiday slipped all the way out of the lottery to the Philadelphia 76ers at 17. He might have gone even lower if he weren't so impressive in his workouts. Nobody anticipated this NBA pipeline for the Jrue Holiday they saw in high school. But there he was in 2009, and here he was a decade and a half later. All's well that ends well. But what happened in between? Well, the 76ers hit on their draft pick. Holiday proved he could defend NBA players even as a teenager. He ran the offense plenty and looked good doing it. Jrue shot well from downtown, wiping away the primary red flag on his college resume, and Holiday only improved on that solid rookie season. And the Sixers improved with him. They made it back to the playoffs in 2011, then made it into the second round in 2012. You might remember that conference semifinal battle with the Celtics from the documentary film Uncut Gems. Anyway, 2012 is when Jrue and the Sixers began to diverge. In the 12-13 season, Holiday fully broke out as an all-star, scoring and creating more than ever before with the same great work on defense. In that same 12-13 season, the Sixers walked headfirst into franchise-altering disaster. This right here is one of the largest and, in retrospect, grimmest trades in NBA history. For our purposes, the Sixers gave up multiple good players in exchange for a package centered around Andrew Bynum, a very good player and hypothetical co-star whose bizarre injury saga prevented him from playing a single game in Philadelphia. The Sixers went from decent to mediocre in an instant. They fired their general manager and replaced him with a fella called Sam Hinkie, who quickly determined that the best way to recover from the post-trade mediocrity was to steer into the skid. He would empty out the roster, tank for high draft picks, and rebuild from scratch. This brazen tank job, and its partial but undeniable payoff, would come to be called the process. And the first victim of the process was Jrue Holiday. What do you do with a 23-year-old point guard who just led your team in scoring and assists? You turn him into draft capital, baby. For his all-star ascent, Jrue was rewarded with a sudden draft night trade to the freshly renamed and actively terrible New Orleans Pelicans. On paper, this stretch looks like a deep valley spanning the prime of Holiday's career. Jrue's Pelicans had a losing record during his tenure. They won just a single playoff series in 7 years. Holiday's numbers dipped, and he didn't make another All-Star team the whole time he was in New Orleans. In fact, the gap between Holiday's 2013 All-Star selection and his selection in 2023 as a Milwaukee Buck represents the longest such gap in history up to that point. Some of that, of course, was environment. Holiday played alongside a young, budding superstar Anthony Davis for most of that New Orleans stint and thus reverted to a second fiddle role. But injury played a part too. Holiday missed huge chunks of his New Orleans tenure because of leg surgery, then eye socket surgery, then abdominal surgery. And this was also a trying time for non-basketball reasons. In 2016, while pregnant, Lauren Holiday was diagnosed with a benign brain tumor. Jrue took a leave of absence to be home with his wife, who thankfully gave birth to a healthy daughter, then had the tumor successfully removed. It wasn't until around year 5 in New Orleans that Holiday found full health and availability and started to help lead the Pelicans towards success. And then Davis bailed, and the Pelicans decided to rebuild around Zion Williamson. The point is, this was not how Jrue or anyone else hoped his 7 years in New Orleans might go. This was well below the trajectory established in Philadelphia. And yet, perhaps more so than any other oft-injured player for an oft-losing team, Holiday will never have to buy a drink in New Orleans. He's cool with Pelicans fans for life. Why? Well, because he persisted through the tough stuff and made the most of his role. By the end of that Pelicans tenure, premier opponents were starting to call Jrue the best defender in the NBA, even though he had never won that award. It's also because Holiday was a world-renowned sweetie who endeared himself not just to coworkers, but to the whole community, with which he developed a real connection. And because even in the post-Davis rebuild, Holiday insisted he was ready to commit to the Pelicans. Who knows if Jrue actually would have stayed if he hit free agency as a Pelican, but suffice to say, he did not force his way out. If things went better with Davis, or even if the aftermath of his departure shook out differently, the Pelicans may have gone all out to keep Jrue. If Jrue didn't work toward that elite defensive reputation in New Orleans, contending teams wouldn't have bid for his services. He may not have had this late career run of excellence. But that is Jrue Holiday's story. Each step of the way, the outcome wasn't exactly what people expected, and perhaps not what Holiday himself would have chosen. And yet, thanks to the kind of player Holiday is and person he seems to be, all those unexpected turns led him here, to the kind of impact and career legacy any athlete would love to have. The missing piece, the most underrated, your favorite player's favorite player, the X factor on teams that couldn't have won it all without him. Thanks for watching this episode of Prism. If you subscribe to Secret Base on Patreon, you could see episodes like this long before they air on YouTube and just so much other stuff.